pioneering solutions, transformational technology, and inspirational leaders. I'm your host, Connor Sherman, and this is the Confident Defense Podcast. Welcome to the Confident Defense Podcast. I'm your host, Connor, and today our guest is Chen. Chen Gour-Arie is the co-founder and chief architect for Enso and Security. Chen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Connor.
Pleasure. So, Chen, I'm really excited to have you on the show because you stepped out a few years ago and co-founded Enso, which I understand is like you built an application security posture management platform. And there's a lot in that sentence, and I want you to unpack that for us. But basically, the core mission of Enso is to help teams scale and gain control of their application security at scale, right, for enterprise clients. So could you explain to me why it is you went out to build Enso, and why you chose to spend these years of your career building and solving this problem?
It came naturally to me as part of my trying to deal with my day-to-day work. Me and my co-founders were working together as a team. And you know, in the AppSec area, you spend your career challenging implementations, researching, trying to understand the complexity of application security. The developers, the people who are creating the application you're trying to protect, invested a lot in velocity engineering, in systems that let them develop much faster and let them grow as an organization and collaborate with teams of thousands of people on applications. They have systems that today are fully standard to do this. All of us know of those systems, everything that is in DevOps loop. And the amount of the productivity has increased so much. And I, as a professional, was trying to protect these products, realized that it is impossible for teams to do it manually and stay sharp on what they actually should be doing. On the other hand, I always enjoyed throughout my career building tools, like appropriate tools for the task. Every time so in my early years, I was more focused on pen testing. I was coding small scripts up to like mini UIs to solve things in a better way from my point of view. And the moment I realized that I'm missing a lot of visibility and a lot of data inside the organization that is created and controlled in these systems, in the system that developers are using to scale their operation, I used my ability to build tools to start gathering this data.
So let's touch on that. So if I can interrupt you, I'm fascinated by this idea. Like I know that we, as security professionals, we often see the world through our own lens, right? And we kind of solve the problem that we know exists. How is it that you were expanding that view? What were you doing to gain that bird's eye view of what was going on and expand your horizon?
So it all started as a question. How can I find out what other instances of this specific combination of issues exist in my portfolio, in my scope of work, in my mission scope? I need to protect all these applications. Now I know through a dedicated pinpointed research that I conducted together with my team that there is a specific problem, and this problem is not an instance of a problem. It's a weakness. It's something that propagates throughout my technology, and it has a common denominator across the make of the application that points this application to be vulnerable to this specific problem. So I had a list of questions. I need these four conditions to be met, so I know that this function is vulnerable, but I didn't have this data. I was starting thinking, where can I find this data? Where can I get a list of all applications that have these attributes, that have this specific configuration, this specific implementation, and using this specific technology? So I started exploring around, and I saw the APIs of my build automation services, my APIs of my deployment services, of my source code repositories, and I saw that all these APIs have this information in them. So I started fetching this information, and using it in the beginning. I didn't know how exactly I'm going to use it, because once you realize that you have an opportunity to collect information in a way that is a bit different, you get greedy. You get greedy in reaching out to everything you can get. And then you need to go through a process of understanding how could this actually help you progress as application security that is trying to deliver in a company.
And what type of information are you collecting here? Is it metadata about the application? Are you looking at libraries? Like, help me understand, what is it that when you're looking at those endpoints, what are you surfacing?
So there is a list of essential things that you need to be made aware of when you're asking yourself what kind of applications you have. Basically, you need to be able to scroll over the entire list and see the full picture of everything, and you need the ability to do some profiling. What kind of data specifically is always, and this is one of the biggest challenges that we're solving here in Enso, is always custom, is always specific to the specific context in which this data exists. I can explain. You have 5 different ways to connect to Kafka message buses. Each of these ways can be described completely differently. The pattern to code this can be based on configuration, can be based on code files, can be based on many different things. Many organizations are using Kafka, but if you read through the repositories, the hints of Kafka use and a specific topic use, the specific hints on what exactly is being done there will be completely different. And then you always need to be collecting based on the specific environment, and you need to be able to profile your inventory of applications for information about what kind of data they use, what kind of technologies they use, what kind of businesses, what kind of functionality they have. And this should be your mission, your target. It's not very easy to accomplish this, but this is the kind of information that can help you later on apply the right security activities, security goals, security targets on each part of the application inventory.
Okay, so it sounds like by understanding the specific technologies in your environment, you mentioned Kafka, you might have certain pipelines, you might have certain code repositories, you're pulling together the metadata of the objects that are flowing through those systems, and because of that you're able to see what applications are actually out there, and then from there you're profiling them, and then it becomes the abstraction layer, what's the risk to the business, so on and so forth, and then that gives a priority sense. Is that how you're attacking this?
Yes, it's in very general terms, yes. We have some different principles that work together in the way that we are collecting this information. One very important principle is that the trail of information throughout DevOps is consistent inside a working pipeline, because otherwise it wouldn't work. So we can always keep track of code from the hands of the developer to an installed, mounted, monitored application in production environment if it is being delivered with a pipeline. So our first principle is the most simple one. First, we need to map it. We want before you have in your Google Maps, before you can have information about what kind of business is in every corner. First, you need to draw the lines of the streets and the roads, and then you can add the information about what kind of buildings. So first, we find this kind of trail, and then you go about enriching it, and the enriching can sometimes be very trivial, like collecting information about dependencies. Can be done in many different ways, but can also be very specific and very oriented on the specific organization, specific technology, the specific framework, internal frameworks, the specific internal conditions and contexts.
Got it. No, I love it. I think so. Tell me a bit more. Like, how big is this problem space? Like, is this something that only a handful of companies have issues with? Is it just an industry-wide problem where people are having a hard time grappling and understanding what code is going through those pipelines? How big is this problem?
So the way I see it, it's you can look at it from many different ways. I think it's very much like we see the tip of the iceberg, and beneath it there is a huge amount of applications. We can answer it with a very simple logic. In 2021, if you have 1,000 engineers, how many of them are contributing to your infrastructure, to building your infrastructure? You probably have 50 to 100 maximum engineers that are DevOps system engineers, and they are building for your infrastructure. Every mistake they make, every unsafe configuration, every mistake they make is under the jurisdiction of areas that are not application security. It's under the jurisdiction of cloud security, infrastructure security, networking security. The rest of your engineers, if you have 1,000 people in the organization, usually will be developers building custom applications. And security is by a large extent mistakes done by engineers that were not educated enough, were not aware enough of the runtime conditions. And a very simple question is, 900 people would make more mistakes than 100 people or less mistakes?
Right, and there you go. When you got 5 to 10% of your team's building the infrastructure, and 90 to 95% is like releasing code over that infrastructure, which is more likely out of the problem space. That's actually a pretty good breakdown, and actually dovetails supporting with the observations that we see with Cobalt. So Cobalt's a pen testing firm that came on the show a little while back, and they release their state of the pen test. Every year they do their annual report, and it's year after year the top area is misconfigurations. A human made a mistake when we released application ABC into the wild, and that got exploited, and that was the finding of the pen test. So yeah, this idea that humans are making mistakes for whatever reason, right? All the different motivations and pressures that engineers go under, it just seems to be the case.
Yeah, it's really challenging. Like every area of engineering, it's really challenging to build security. It's very challenging to build applications, and it's really, really challenging to build secure applications. So people are bound to make mistakes. I've made mistakes. I was lucky enough to catch it in time. I spent a few years building applications, so I got to actually see what it means. I was pen testing applications for 6 years. I've seen almost any technology and how you can break it down. How can you break it? And then I said I need a creational break. I want to build something instead of breaking something. So I took about 3 years. Spent my time learning how to code and building applications from ground up, and I was coding bugs. I was giving birth to security bugs in my applications, which made me realize it's really easy to make mistakes there. It's very, very fragile if you are not building on a mature framework that takes care also of your own specific concerns. What we call like secure design. Until you haven't arrived at that, it's very easy to mess up.
Yeah, it's almost like an inappropriate ask of us as the industry to say, hey, 900 engineers in that example. It's like, we just want you to code perfectly all the time, forever. It's like trying to say, hey, we don't want to get in a car wreck, so we're going to give you 4 wheels and a driving stick, and just like don't hit anything. Versus saying, okay, let's build out a security infrastructure that has airbags and seat belts and alarm systems and so on and so forth. Right?
Exactly. So, and companies that mature goes to that direction. They build a safe by default. They build a situation where the framework is safe enough to use by the developers, and then using it safely is the easiest option. And when using it safely is the easiest option, this is what developers would do, because developers are about delivering the functions. But it takes time. It takes time for organizations to get there. They need to understand what is there, because we're not talking only about technical bugs. We're talking also about business-related bugs. Some flaws in business context authorization, some things that are not. It's not enough to not have a SQL injection attack or an ability to do a SSRF attack. You need sometimes to go even deeper and understand the business context and understand that sending this amount of transactions from a single user. So, for example, you're trying to protect the system that manages the bookings to participants in the confidence in the session. And then someone is building a bot that is booking all the right places, releasing them, booking them, releasing them, booking them, releasing them, just to mess up your numbers. You have to deal with this. It's not technical security. You have to deal with it on a different level, and this is something that you can only actually allow yourself if you've finished the simple stuff with fixing the technical problems.
Yeah, that business layer is always so difficult because it is something that you mentioned, as you mentioned, it's not something that you can just throw a scanner at and it's going to say, great, you have this business context aware problem. Like, this is where the engineers, being good business partners, can like surface up the context of this. So let me pivot this a bit. So let's say we go down this road. You mentioned that organizations that are really trying to solve this problem well have this maturity curve. And as they're getting more mature, they're building platforms that enable engineers to build safe by default. What do you think the rate, so the work that you're doing with Enso, helping surface up this information, really helping people along in that journey, what do you expect the impact for Enso and for Enso to have on the overall market, or more just generally, if there was maturity in the application space? How would this decrease the rates of incidents that we're seeing out in the wild today?
I think that it will take some time for businesses to actually manage, because Enso is a facilitator here. Enso is about collecting the right information and eliminating a lot of the chaos and a lot of the overhead that security teams and application security teams have today. Which limits their ability to actually push the organization to mature. But maturing an organization is an unbelievable challenge. It's about culture, it's about technology, it's about resources, it's about the business. It's an unbelievable challenge, and it's not Enso alone. It's all the players together. All the players have. I think that all the. So if you look at maturity standards, they instruct you to conduct a very long list of activities and measure all of them and collect all the information to understand how you're progressing through the maturity steps. And to do this, you need the help of all the vendors out there. We actually need the help of all the ASTs, all the protectors, all the security solutions out there. We just need to bring them together and to be able to give each of these tools, because all of them, as cost, the people that build them needs to get paid, and the people that are giving the services need to get paid, and to bring all the tools together and give them the ability to apply the right suit of let's say, application healthcare, healthcare around your application. So it's a suit of services. It's a suit of things together. But you do want a healthcare provider that help you navigate through this and gives you the reference to the right doctors or to the right test or to the right. So I think that this is a group effort. This is a joint effort of many vendors together. But I think what is missing is some kind of tailoring and something that helps bringing all these services together, because eventually the way that the industry already woken up, I think, from trying to to think that the security job is to delay the business until it is safe. Security job is to run as fast as possible with the business to make sure that it is as safe as possible as the business progress. And it's a change in thinking, and this is why maturity standard, I think, have this notion of you don't jump right away to doing everything. You go through the steps. You do it step by step towards maturity, and it is really complex. It requires you to build a good strategy in mapping up what you need, what it is that you have that you want to protect, choosing which parts of it you will be actually focusing on, and then starting bringing in all the services at your disposal to basically start this process. And final thing is that if you do it correctly and you measure everything, you will be able to actually decide which things works for you better and be able to actually accomplish maturity. What you will find out eventually, especially if you're scaling up dramatically, is that investing in a secure design is your final, your golden egg, your strategy. I think that it's shared between many professionals that this should be your strategy, but the road to there goes, for example, through a lot of testing that shows you that you have a specific area in this area and you should find a better secure design to not have these kind of findings come back again and again and again and again. And as you do this few times, you will actually get really mature and build something that is sustainable in terms of security.
Gotcha. No, I think I'm with you there. I do want to touch on one piece though, is that where does Enso and the static application, the dynamic application testing work together? Is it that they're just surfacing, so like you're finding the infrastructure, you're plugging into the infrastructure to surface up, here's what's actually happening, they're surfacing up their coverage in what they're scanning, and we're measuring the delta? Like how do those two things come together?
Yeah, so Enso basically continuously tracks what application assets you have. Mm-hmm. There is one group of application assets, say these are artifacts mounted as services in your staging environment. And all of this is a list, and Enso gets a list because it is a designated list. And you will build a strategy through your policies that tells Enso to activate your dust and to show the coverage of your dust on this specific environment. And the dust is basically a tool that can take a URL of application, maybe with some additional menu recipe for running, and cover this kind of perform the dynamic scan. A SAST, on the other hand, is a tool that requires repository as an input, also on SCA. So Enso builds a list of all the different kind of assets. This list is designated with the type of assets. You can find out which assets, the assets are profiled. You can have information, for example, these are the most recent versions in the staging environment, and this could be the same list that your dust is based on. So it is in making the connection between the different tools, collecting the information that is required for the actual different, not only tools, also pen testers. If you have a list of, if you have a pen tester or contractor that you want to bring in once a week, if it's happening in many companies, they have a hot seat. Every week, someone from a consulting company comes in and perform PT. They need to prepare a list of targets for them, not only for the scanner tools.
Got it.
Enso is creating, yeah.
Got it. Okay, so you really are this like force multiplier, where because you finally have, as a security leader, as a technology leader, you finally have an understanding what is exactly going on in my environment, right? What are all the services that are out there? What are all the endpoints? You now as Enso step in and almost an orchestration platform where it's like, hey, a new service just appeared. Let's go and hook that up with a DAS scanner so it's going through. Also, we know we have a new endpoint, so we'll cut a ticket with Jira. I'm just making this piece up. Okay, and send that over to the pen tester who will come in next week and pen test that service. Am I understanding that correctly?
Exactly, yeah.
Got it. So I could see this having a real impact to organizations that are trying to like accelerate this maturity curve and get to a place where they are that, as you described, secure by default. Because for the first time, you know what's going on out there. You can build the right tools. You can build the right frameworks to help the engineering teams actually succeed at this.
Yeah, and you can measure. You can look back. You can look back on. So Enso tracks all of it, both the activities and the evolution of your software, and gives you a correlated log of what happened. So once something goes past all your security testing techniques and comes back in a bug bounty program, hopefully not in a breach, but in a bug bounty program, you know that it skipped through everything. You missed it on all of your security testing, and then you can go back and ask yourself why. Was this tested by me, or was it, or I couldn't cover it because I don't have enough resources? Was it tested by my SAST? Maybe it wasn't. Was a contractor testing this? So you can ask yourself questions to actually improve and optimize your resources.
Got it. Okay, so I want to take a step back and just pivot more towards the industry and get your opinion on something here. So based on your experience as a pen tester, as an engineer, and now as someone who's at the front row seat helping a lot of CISOs tackle these security problems, from your perspective, what are some of the most impactful changes that leaders, either security or technology leaders, could be doing today to improve their application security?
I think it's very important for the way that we do it to change into a way that we say we want to be managing it. We don't want to be keep chasing and I'm not sure how to say this, but in Hebrew we say shutting down the fires.
Putting out the small fires everywhere. Exactly.
We don't want to just go chasing putting out fires, small fires. We want to manage it, and we want to manage it alongside with the business, and we want to reach to a point that the risk is manageable. And as long as we are just chasing bugs, like a bunch of hunters, which is really cool and really nice, and also really advanced from a professional and technological perspective, the level of understanding that good researchers have is in many ways very, very advanced, even if you compare it to very experienced engineers. Some of the researchers, the security researchers out there have equivalent level of understanding of technology. But the endless chase around bugs is taking a lot of the attention and creating some sort of a chaotic situation when we only give attention to things that we suspect are vulnerable or things that we know that are already vulnerable. And we are not being organized enough to make sure that we cover the places where it's important. So it's like a parade walking outside, or maybe so say you are responsible to protect a village, but in this village there is the hospital, which is the most important place. The parade is walking near the hospital. It's very noisy, so everybody is leaving the hospital to go look at it. And the hospital is empty, and no one is making sure that nothing is going on there. So it draws a lot of the attention. Even so, an RCE on a zero impact service, a service that has no connection to any data, nothing, can take a lot of your attention, while changes to your core golden egg application not necessarily being reviewed in the right time.
Fair. Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like really just focusing on making sure that you understand what's important, and then never taking your eye off the ball. No matter what the noise is, no matter what the criticality of the scanner that comes back and says this is the world's worst thing, if it's not critical to the business, deal with it accordingly, but don't take your eyes off the business.
Exactly.
Got it. So, as someone who's built and worked with a lot of UI, UX things, I'm also kind of curious, what do you think we could do to improve the experience, the security experience of modern apps as well? I often found that we create tools and systems, and then like either users or engineers, they choose insecure paths because the system kind of like led them down a bad path versus having a thought through UI, UX experience. I'm just curious if you have some thoughts on how we could be both improving both the security and the user experience where everyone's moving through applications more safely.
That's a huge question. I think that if I'm getting exactly what you mean by this question, I think that, for example, processes like or trends like using social login and being more centrally identity federation in general is with the inconvenience or the little bit lose of control of managing the identity yourself. Building on identity federation facilities does what you ask for by making authentication and authorization basically a little bit more streamlined to implement. If we go to the maker side, developer side, I think it's in general there is a nice trend going on in having IDEs pull this information and letting developers already suggesting to developers more relevant information for more intelligence on how safe their code is already in their IDE, in the development environment. And I think this can improve big part of this process. Yeah, I'm not sure this answers your question.
No, that's perfect. I liked how you took both sides of that too, because I completely agree with it. I think social logins is kind of a quick way to say, cool, okay, we know that we've put a front door that's easy for people to walk through from a consumer perspective. And then we kind of also gain from that is the fact that Google, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, they also don't want account takeovers. So they've got some rather robust ways of preventing that. So you can kind of piggyback on that.
Exactly.
And I too am also excited to see the future of IDEs. I see this as an interesting space for ML to step in and say, hey, we've written the code that you've seen beforehand. We're kind of helping you. We're helping you with that, not autocomplete function, but really more of a suggested path going forward. Here's a suggested safe path forward to continue with your development. So
yeah. I think also we get a lot we get asked a lot about how can you communicate with developers, because we built Enso. We are a bunch of AppSec guys. We built Enso for AppSec teams. It is designed to answer many of the problems that we were facing. When we introduce it, we get people ask us how can we help them communicate with the developers, and I think developers it's not very easy to communicate with them. It's not very easy for them to communicate with each other sometimes. Of course, brilliant people and everyone is different, but it's more like a joke. But generally, I think that it's very difficult as a professional when you're working in a creative zone to switch into fixing zone, to make this context switch. I'm now building something, now I need to go and take care of a problem. Right. And they tend to want to stay in the building something path because it's nicer. I think that intellectually, it's nicer to create something than to fix a problem, especially if this problem is not very clear, especially if you are not really. So if you see that the button is messed up and you can't click it, for sure it is a problem. But if you are told about some theoretical scenario where your function can be abused, and then you need to switch out from your creative zone and fix that, it is very uncomfortable for developers to do that, and this is why it is not so easy to make shift left in general in many different areas. And a way to do this is to connect to their angle. So, for example, instead of communicating the problem, try to communicate a simple fix. Fix first, and then the TLDR. Too long didn't read. Yeah. Afterwards to explain about this. This is a very simple thing to just speak their language.
That is a great communication hack. I got to tell you, the first guest on my show who's really illuminated that particular problem. So thank you, because I think it's such an incredible insight, this difference in mentality that an engineer is between building, changing gears to fixing. Yeah. And because they're in the same terminal, they're the same console, they're in the same tool sets, we may not think of it as a context switch. But you're right, it really is this whole mental shift you have to go through to go forward.
You can see this in their eyes when you're coming to the room and saying, guys, you have a problem you need to fix. You can see the level of happiness goes down by a little bit. Yeah. And then they associate it with you sometimes, but no, it's more that you see. I totally understand. I think that it's very difficult to move from one mindset to the other.
Yeah. Okay. So final question here, May, and this one's really about you and your journey within security. What are your top, say, 3 books or resources that have greatly influenced your view on security?
So first, I have to say Mozilla Development Network, documentation on JavaScript API. It's hard for me to answer this question. I'm more of I just go about the internet wildly collecting my data. Yep. But definitely one place that I go back to is MDN for very good information about web technologies and about the security of web technologies, accurate examples and good explanations.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's a fantastic resource. And like those who've discovered it know how to lean into it, and then there's like the rest of the internet who's just blindly stumbling around trying to figure out what to do. Though it's an incredibly great resource. So Chen, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate the conversation, and I love this solution that you guys are bringing to market to help application security teams really win at scale and gain that insight into their application security. So I'll be reaching out in the show notes. Everyone who is listening, there will be links to the Twitter, the LinkedIn's, to connect with Chen and the larger team over at Enso. But Chen, is there any way that you would prefer for the community here to reach out and connect with you and the team?
Yeah, we'd love for us to come to our LinkedIn pages, to Twitter, to our website, and take a look at what we're doing. We're sharing constantly about our company and about our journey. So
Awesome.
You're all welcome.
Chen, thank you again for your time. You've been an incredible guest.
Thank you very much for having me. It was really, really interesting conversation. Thanks a lot.